All right, good evening. We are going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Curriculum and Evaluation Committee of the Nashua Board of Education to order. My name is Jessica Brown, and we're going to go ahead and take a roll call for our committee. Ms. Johnson?
Present.
Ms. Bishop?
Here.
All right, and Jessica Brown, I am here, and so we do have a quorum. Also in attendance, we have Mr. Garino.
Here.
Dr. McKinney.
Here.
And let's see, will go ahead. Lisa Drew.
Here.
Deb DeSillis.
Here.
Jacqueline Okanak.
Yes, here.
Maureen Gambaccini.
Let's try it. I'm here, Gambaccini. It's a
Gambaccini. Sorry about that. I apologize. Monica Tino.
Here.
Julie Morris.
Here.
And Beth Wheeler. And doing our tech duties are Ms. Tara Kinsilla. So thank you very much. All right. So our first item on the agenda is discussion of the Choose Love SEL pilot for the update and recommendation. So Dr. McKinney, would you like to go ahead and give us some background on that?
Sure. So I'll just start with, I first learned about the program. There was a statewide conference on social emotional learning where Scarlett Lewis presented. She's the founder. She's from Newtown, Connecticut, and actually lost her son, Jesse, in the tragedy that happened there. She later presented in the spring to the district for teachers and parents. And then we approached the board for a pilot for this year. So thankfully, Jackie Okanak, the assistant principal at Maine Dunstable, has been coordinating that. I'm just going to turn things over to her to talk to some of the items in your packet.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having us this afternoon. I think the sun came out. A year ago, like Garth said, the Board of Education had the pleasure of hearing Scarlett Lewis present her story and the Choose Love Enrichment Program. And at that time, they did approve the pilot of the materials for the 2019-20 school year. And for that, I am very grateful. Scarlett's presentation to the Board of Education came at a time that we were looking for something to aid in teaching social emotional skills that we found students needed. Our teachers recognized that the Choose Love program was something truly special. We had over 40 teachers pilot materials this year, and we ended up with many more wanting to try the lessons. We actually had 5 of our elementary schools actually experienced full school implementation. That's how excited the teachers were about it. And that was really great. So now that we're in the world of remote learning, I've heard numerous teachers say how grateful they are for having this program in place to help the students navigate these really uncharted waters for all of us. So Garth did talk a little bit about, but for some of you who don't know about the Choose Love program, it's based on 4 units that create a formula. So it's courage plus gratitude plus forgiveness plus compassion and action equals choose love. So each unit, no matter what grade level, the basic practices are the same. It's suggested to teach one lesson, only one lesson a week, and then reinforce that lesson throughout the week. And there are between 4 and 6 lessons per unit. If you haven't had the opportunity of hearing Scarlett speak, I would highly recommend watching the recording of the board meeting when she presented to us, because it was very moving. Or go to the website and read all the free materials that they have. So to update you on how the staff has enjoyed this program, I have 5 people to share their stories and experiences with you. I actually sent emails out to the administrators just asking for people, and I got so many names, I couldn't have everybody come because we would have like 3 pages, so I had to kind of narrow it down. So I have 2 guidance counselors, 2 teachers, and 1 parent who actually happens to be a teacher as well. So we're going to start off with Deb. She's a guidance counselor from Amherst Street School, and we'll let her start.
So thanks for having me. I think one of my school had multiple people that were interested in talking too, so I tried to gather their notes to share it all. Just to give a little bit of background, Amherst Street had just finished a 5-year pilot program of another social emotional program that we completed. That was really expensive. We had a grant to use it, but we are in pretty good shape in our building in terms of having a universal curriculum for social emotional learning. So one of the things we've learned through that is how important it is for the whole building to be working on the same thing. So between, once a month, we kick off the theme, we do classroom lessons, I go in and reinforce, we have town halls, and so we're already in that rhythm. So this was the first year that we actually decided that to continue that program is pretty expensive, and Choose Love is free. So, and it really fits in quite well. So we do the big three, which is respect, responsibility, and safety, and then we'll do the 4 themes of Choose Love to cover. And so once a month we'll pick one. And so we had first grade really do a lot with Choose Love this year. They did a lot with courage. They did a lot with gratitude. Gratitude journals. We do mindful moments. We do a lot throughout the building with mindfulness and different tools, physical postures to help kids feel strong. We also had 2 second grade teachers that actually are completing a graduate program, and they picked Choose Love as one of their thesis projects. So they interviewed our staff in terms of making sure we had consensus in the building before we take something on. We make sure everybody's on board with it. And 4th grade has done quite a few programs. So I think we're pretty excited about it. And there's a lot, just like anything, we'll add to it, but we like the flexibility of it. So far people have been pretty happy with it.
Great. Thank you. Maureen?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Maureen Gambaccini. I'm the school counselor at Bicentennial Elementary School. And we also piloted the program school-wide this year. And what we kind of did is I created like a general overview of the 4 units, and I kind of broke them down by theme weeks to really help the teachers understand not only the lessons, but also spark some discussions within the classrooms during their morning meeting time. So each day I might read an announcement about a question of the day or a quote that went along with the theme. The first unit is courage. So that's what we started off the year as. And we got to, prior to remote learning, we probably took maybe about 6 or 7 weeks per unit, and we got through the courage, we did gratitude, and then forgiveness, and we were about to start compassion and action when remote learning was starting. And I really thought that the students, but also the staff, really enjoyed the program for a lot of reasons. I think, like Deb mentioned, the common language is huge in elementary school. And it was great to see kindergarten through 5th grade through announcements, and then the teachers would carry that over with the lessons in the classroom. They would participate in a lot of school-wide. We had a giant bulletin board that for each unit we would we had like our gratitude tree. We planted seeds of forgiveness during forgiveness, and so all the students participated in that. We did some of our community building through this program too. So for gratitude, to show gratitude for others in the community, we did like this kind of happy birthday drive where kids could bring leftover birthday items, and we donated that to the soup kitchen they have a birthday room where kids that need it can pick out some birthday supplies and things like that. So that was one reason, is that common language, that everybody was learning the same thing. But I also felt this program was great to integrate in some of the things we already have going in Nashua. At our school, we do films of regulation. I really found that we were able to integrate that well into Choose Love. In addition, our counseling curriculum, I was able to expand our curriculum to really integrate into Choose Love at all the grades, at all the grade levels. And I found that doing that, the kids had a lot of deeper level understanding. When I would go in and talk about bullying behavior, the kids would bring up courage all on their own. So I would take that opportunity to then have the kids practice like their brave pose or their brave breath, those practical things that they were learning in Choose Love, and how that related to some of the other curriculum that we also need to teach as school counselors. So that was great to see. But I think the most important reason I really liked Choose Love was that the kids seemed to enjoy it and get it. I really saw them making connections. I saw them want to do the lessons, and for the younger grades, they were really into practicing some of the things like, their brave breath and their brave pose or their gratitude breath. But they were making really amazing connections. Just for example, in 2nd grade, I did a lesson on kind of gratitude for others. And we were doing a compliment chain. And I asked one of the students how it felt to give a classmate a compliment. And they said it kind of feels like giving a gift to a homeless person. And that's huge for a 2nd grader to really be able to verbalize that. And I think Choose Love had a lot to do with that. And I'm happy to share more information if you want at the end, because I really do think this program was amazing for us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Drew, and I teach second grade at Broad Street, and I also have a third grader who attends Broad Street, my son. So I attended the Choose Love workshop, and I listened to Scarlett Lewis speak. And as she spoke, I wept. I wept for her son, I wept for mine, and for the world that we live in today. And every year, the students that come into our classrooms need us more and more, but not only for academic reasons. They need us to provide explicit instruction in social emotional learning now. The students we have in front of us now are not equipped to handle what's being thrown at them all day long. The stress from school demands, peer issues, problems at home. They have no idea how to deal in a healthy way. So we're seeing that negative fallout from kids who are just overwhelmed and underprepared with how to care for themselves emotionally. The lessons in Choose Love are so easy to follow, and they focus on one of the 4 areas that have already been spoken about: courage, gratitude, forgiveness, and compassion in action. In my second grade class, I teach a lesson each Monday, and we practice that idea all week long, discussing it, finding examples in our day. Students would be excited to share when they had success with one of the skills, and the other students would react accordingly and praise them. The day that I realized that Choose Love was making a really big impact on my students was right before a math test. One of my most behaviorally challenging students, who historically had not bought into anything as far as incentives or behavior plans or rewards, just stood up really quietly at his seat and put one hand on his belly and one hand on his chest, and he started to breathe these long, deep breaths in and out. He was not looking for an audience, but he certainly got one. He was practicing his brave breaths and trying to calm his mind and body prior to his test. When the other students saw him, they started to join in one by one in silence until they were all standing and doing brave breaths. After this, we practiced this skill before any testing. The students felt united, and it gave the whole class this sense of calm. This program helps our students learn skills to help them be courageous, to understand gratitude and practice it, and to learn forgiveness and compassion. I know the world sure needs more people who practice these skills. I know I want my son to grow up in a world that does choose love. So let's give our students the tools they need to succeed and make this world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie?
Morris. I'm a 4th grade teacher at Dr. Chris, and this is actually the 2nd year that I've had the opportunity to do this program. The previous fall, we had been having a rash of really challenging behaviors across our grade level, but also throughout the school. And this was a program that our guidance counselor had some information about and had encouraged the teachers, particularly at my grade level, to check it out. The resources were free. It was sort of a why not sort of opportunity. So we downloaded the materials, we looked through them, we realized that it was very easy to get going with implementing the curriculum. And very quickly we found that the kids were understanding the activities, they were being impacted by the activities, and it gave us a language to be able to continue to use on a daily basis. And that there were very concrete applications that we could see throughout our days for the 4 pillars. And that's one of the things that I really like about this program, is that there are 4 words, 4 concepts, 4 actions for the kids and us as teachers to focus on throughout our school days. Some social emotional curricula that I've used in the past, there's like a different word every week. And after several weeks, the kids get lost in all of the words and which one was that and what does that mean? Whereas with this, there are 4 that we can continually go back to over and over again. And I think it gives the kids a really in-depth understanding of them, not just what they are, but how we practice those things. And, also the added benefit of the conflict resolution skills that we have at the 4th grade level, teaching the kids how to cooperate, which we do so much of. There's just constant opportunity to practice the skills in the curriculum and to use those words throughout everything that we do at school. The kids at this point in the year are very comfortable with what those words mean. And I hear them starting to use it, sometimes in their writing, sometimes just in our class conversations. They will bring up these words and point out examples that they're seeing. So that tells me that it's really making a difference for them. One of the other things that I really like is that it's a framework that is very flexible. You know, we've added to it in various ways. It integrates beautifully with so many areas of the curriculum, particularly social studies lessons. We can constantly find examples of that in the history that we're learning, in literature. Again, we can make lots of connections and tiebacks. So it's just something to keep alive school day, and it's very useful to the children. So we've had a positive experience with it.
Thanks. Beth?
Hi, my name is Seth Miller. I think you know that already, but I have 2 children who attend Maine Dunstable School. My daughter is in kindergarten and my son is in 2nd grade. I definitely like to start by talking a little bit about the changes I've seen in my daughter. Up until about 6 months ago, we were dealing with pretty regular tantrums that would go on for an hour plus. And she was not able to express to us how she was feeling, what caused the tantrum, which we knew were feelings that she felt out of control, but she couldn't express to us what she felt out of control about. And she just didn't have the mindfulness skills to self-calm. And it got pretty intense for a while. And we have seen huge changes in her since starting school this year and receiving Choose Love lessons pretty much with fidelity, I'm pretty sure, with her kindergarten teacher at Iris Matia. One second. Yes. And so she is now able, we see the mindfulness in her. She's able to self-calm herself. She's able to express to us now when she's becoming frustrated or what she needs from us. And that's a confidence that we didn't see in her before. And a few people have already talked about the language, but the language has been really, I am fortunate to be a teacher in the district at Bicentennial that is using this school-wide. So I know the 4 pillars, but we also use the, my husband doesn't, and we use there's a component of the materials that are a home calendar that we print and we use. And, he has learned the 4 pillars, and we can say to Ada now, we need some forgiveness from you right now, or we need some compassion because this is how you're making us feel. Also, just to kind of speak how this has affected my son as well, he had a lot of just natural compassion and kindness. That's just his natural personality, but this being home all together, and both my husband and I are really fortunate to still be working full time. And there are a lot of times during the day where I'm teaching online or he's on a meeting and the kids are off and they need to play on their own. And obviously, with siblings and a 5 and a 7-year-old, there is conflict a lot of the time. And they are really able to problem solve those problems on their own for the most part. So that Lisa, I think the 4th grade teacher talked about conflict resolution. That was a big part of the 4th grade curriculum. They're learning those skills naturally through the idea of forgiveness and the ideas of compassion, even before it's a big kind of official part of the curriculum. So it has definitely helped our family kind of mellow out a little bit over the last 6 months, and we're really, really grateful for it. Oh, and just one more thing. Ada's thing that she says all the time is that she loves love. The second word that she learned how to write on her own, but after her name, was the word love. And, it's probably pretty typical for a 5-year-old, but 6 months ago, she was really always hyper-focused on what was wrong being done wrong to her, or, you know, what was frustrating her. And now, I mean, just constantly, I just went around the house to find some examples of this. She's constantly making little things that say love, and she'll put them at our place, at our table for dinner. And I don't want to, she made this for her brother the other day when he was upset. I don't want to get choked up, but that if you listen to Scarlett talk, she talks about how she returned to her house after Jesse had been killed, and she saw a chalkboard that they had in their gym, and he had written, I can't remember the words now, but a message,
healing love.
Yeah, thank you. A message of love. We have a little chalkboard in our kitchen, and Ada did one a while ago. She did one of these little messages of love on it, and that really hurt me just as a parent at first, seeing that, and it made me think of Jesse and, you know, that. But the fact that the message now is being spread through kids like Ada and like Finn is really powerful, because Ada's unknowingly really spreading his message of love, and I just really think that has to continue. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Let me get something. Personally, as an administrator, Kelly and I see students learning it right away. Like the first 2 weeks into our year last year, Kelly had to see an older student who didn't make a great choice when he became upset with a friend. And so he was sitting there waiting to talk to her, and he started to breathe, and he was taking his brave breaths. And her knowing the language, and because we were a whole school implementing this, she recognized it, put that to words, and was able to validate that that was a great tool. And then they were able to continue on with, what could we do differently? And I feel like that's a big piece of it. You're naming that emotion. It's not a bad emotion. It's just how are we responding to that? I had a younger student, like a first grade student, who also didn't make a good choice with a friend. And when I asked what happened, he made the gesture like this. He goes, I flipped my lid. So if you guys aren't familiar, all the way starting in first grade, I'm not sure about kindergarten, but they start to learn about the brain. And they learn that the wrist palm is the lizard. They call it the lizard brain, and it's responsible for us breathing, our heartbeat, you know, controlling our temperature. And then they learn about the numbat. And the numbat's responsible for our emotions, relationships. And then when you wrap the fingers around, then this part of the brain, they call the human brain. And that's helping us think clearly, solve problems. So they learn when they flip their lid that the lizard, numbat, and human can't work together because they're so far apart. So he already knew that. He was like, he was crying, but he was like, I flipped my lid. And so I'm like, yeah, it sounds like you did flip your lid. What could we do differently? And then again, he took a breath, and we were able to problem solve it. They're seeing this stuff. I had to go see 2 fourth graders. By the time I got up the steps, they had already solved it. They're like, oh, Mrs. Okanak, we already got this. This is what we did. And this is what we figured out. And I was like, oh, okay, this is great. So it's just a lot of good stuff that we're seeing. In your packets, you should have received the Choose Love Educator Survey. I sent a copy of that. And that was given at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year for those teachers who volunteered and came to the 2 summer sessions that we had last year. This survey was not one of ours. It was provided by Choose Love. This is where they gather all their data. On the next page, oh, who's doing all this lovely stuff? It's a beautiful thing. On the next page, you will see the result. Okay, see, there's a survey. And we had the teachers do that. And then, okay, we'll do that last. The next are the results. That's the scope and sequence that Choose Love provided us. And the other was just a 1-pager. Results. So the results, yep, right there. So the results of this survey are from the fall and the spring. And so this survey not only tells you the measurement, which was a 6-point scale, but it tells you what was measured. So the survey measures those 4 areas, the courage, gratitude, forgiveness, and compassion and action. But it also measures the 5 SEL competencies that are recognized by CASEL. And CASEL, if you don't know, is called the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. They've been around since 1994. They do a lot of research on social emotional learning. So the next page are some comments, because on a side note, we were in school and I did the paper and pencil survey and collected that. But now that we're remote learning, I had to recreate it in a Google form, and I was able to add this field, which I thought was really important for teachers to kind of put their comments, anything else that they wanted to share with that. So that's that information. I really hope we conveyed how teachers have enjoyed using these lessons and how easily they are integrated into the classroom, and what a difference they're making with our students and some staff. So if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation. I really enjoyed it. And it looks like we have our first question from Ms. Johnson.
Thank you for the presentation. I greatly appreciate it. As I read through all this information, was there any type of negative feedback, or not so much negative, that things could change, that things could improve from what you were doing?
All the comments you see on there are from the people. It was just taken from the survey. Within my school, I haven't heard anything negative. I think at the beginning, some of the first grade, it was kind of wordy, but they just made it their own and kind of went with it with the brave press and stuff. But no, there has been no negativity on my end, but maybe some of the others have heard some things.
But nothing that anybody would want to tweak about on the program at all?
Well, the good thing about it is it's actually pretty flexible. So we definitely, I didn't hear anything negative, but I definitely heard people adding a lot to it. I think Maureen mentioned too, we have our own guidance curriculum, and we also use the big three. We use zones of regulation. So those are programs that we've used for years at Amherst Street School. And what people started doing is they played with it. So within those themes of courage, of gratitude, the Choose Love program gave us a lot of examples to start from, and then people added to it and played with it. And I think that we saw that as a positive, and same thing with the script. Some of it was a little bit wordy, but you don't have to, once you know the script and you're using it yourself, you kind of make your own language to teach kids mindfulness, and mostly lots of positive things to say about it.
And sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. We're not done, I guess, with the answers. So
I was just going to say, Bicentennial, what helped us to add to it was we created like a social emotional folder on our Google Drive. And so I was adding some resources like books or videos or just worksheets to help the teachers that wanted that extension piece that they could add to it, or just make it more fun. A lot of teachers use program at their morning meetings. So I would find activities about, like, you roll a dice and then you respond about things that you're grateful for. And I think that was really helpful in making it more fun, because the kids need that aspect of it too. It needs to be fun and engaging for them to get it as well.
So who exactly do we share this data with? Do we share with school psychologists? Do we share with outside agencies? Who gets all this data?
You mean from the survey?
From the survey and from the schools, when you're doing working with the kids and you fill everything out. I mean, do we have, like, because I'm just coming into this after this was approved, so it's kind of new to me. But I mean, you do all this work, and if you have students that have emotional issues, who gets this data? Do the parents get the data? Are we sharing this with any governmental agencies? Where's the data shared with?
The data is shared with you and with everybody here right now. That's it.
That's it.
Yep. The surveys were done paper pencil at the beginning of the year. I have them in my home office here. And then we did the online survey at the end. And that was just for your benefit and our benefit to see what kind of growth that the kids had.
And I believe if we scroll down to the, if you wouldn't mind scrolling up to the survey that was given to the teachers, it specifies on there that the data will not be, it says it right there, actually. While it assists us in reporting characteristics of people who use the curriculum, your response in individual items is optional, and your name will never be reported in any description of this program.
Well, but this is for the educator, right? This isn't for the
Right.
students?
No, we don't survey students. But Paula, this survey, Choose Love does collect, but that would all be electronic. That's if people went on electronically and they pull that, and then they pull that into their data so they can see what kind of difference it's making. But for us, we just did the paper pencil, and then we did the Google form at the end just to kind of see for our own benefit.
But this is what I want to make sure, that this data information that we're collecting on students is not shared with any agencies.
No.
Mrs. Johnson, it's
Yes.
currently against district policy
Okay,
to survey students.
okay. I just
And
wanted to make
I'm
sure.
committed to that until the board changes it. This is only educator survey results that they gave at the beginning of the year prior to using the program and to after.
Okay.
In order for us to, there are many childhood adverse trauma type surveys. For us to do that, we'd have to come back to the board and revisit that policy.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you have any more questions, Ms. Johnson? And Ms. Bishop, do you have anything at this time?
I love this whole plan. I think we can all attest to the fact that we got a little misty-eyed listening to a lot of this. But I'm really proud that we're looking at this, and it's doing so well, and I can't wait to see it rolled out to the whole district. But that was it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so actually, can you scroll us back down to that one page kind of informational, it was brightly colored sheet. I like shiny things and bright colors. Thank you. Yeah, so I appreciate so much that the folks have said, and I know that most of our elementary schools right now are using the big three: be responsible, be respectful, be safe. And I see so much coordination between those words and these other words, courage and bravery, taking on new challenges, respect, gratitude. You show respect to your teachers and show that you're gracious for the support they're giving you. And forgiveness and resentment are part of being responsible and being respectful to other people. So I think there's very good things that come out of this. I think the evidence is we've been pretty clear that we're not using these tools to diagnose children or try to target any specific group. I think it's great that we're using them to bring the groups together across the board and hopefully facilitate this. I like the fact that we've got, we're using the same set of 4 practices and 4 words from kindergarten all the way up through 5th grade. And so when they transition to the next grade, they're not coming up with new unfamiliar terms. I think that's the key. And then I would love to see how these kids that are starting with this how that's going to formulate their problem solving when they get to the adolescent and middle school level. Because, that's when we see the biggest, most difficult changes in behavior. Let's see, I guess I have 1 or 2 questions here. One is, how long is the focus lesson each day? So you say it's usually during their meetings. Is that take a very long period of time, or is it more about integrating it during the day?
Initial lessons, it kind of varies from lesson to lesson. We've used sometimes we use morning meeting time. We've also used some of our RTI time to implement the lessons. I would say some of them are 15 minutes, some of them are more like 25, but that's like the first go through. But then the integration and the weaving it in is little pockets here and there where the need arises. In terms of behavior management, that is an ongoing way in which we use the language. So it could come up very frequently. If there's some peer conflict going on, it kind of takes over that moment and is used immediately. So throughout the day, it's used, I won't say continuously, but very consistently. but the initial lessons somewhere between 15, 25 minutes.
Thank you.
I'll just speak as a teacher here for a second too, that I've found that the lessons are easily broken up over 2 time periods. So if I am doing them during morning meeting, and my morning meeting is only typically 10 to 15 minutes, and I'll do one part on a Tuesday, and then I'll finish up that activity on a Thursday a lot of the time. So.
In terms of whole school, so the teachers can do that in their classroom. And then at Amherst Street, we've done like mindful moments. We do twice a week over the intercom. So we actually explicitly teach mindfulness twice, and it comes right after our Pledge of Allegiance twice a week. And we've continued doing that through virtual learning. We have bulletin boards. I heard someone else mention that. We have bulletin boards throughout the school for gratitude and acts of kindness. And we have roaring rallies once a month. So when we have a theme of the month, that theme is then celebrated and highlighted. We mentioned teachers that have shown gratitude or shown courage, showed kids. And so we just, there's ways through the whole school that those lessons are reinforced too.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, if no one has anything to add, I would like to go ahead and move that I recommend that, hold on one second, let me make sure I get my motion right here. I recommend that we approve the Choose Love SEL pilot for the district-wide for grades kindergarten through 5th. May I get a second?
Second.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Bishop. All right. And so let's see. I'm going to do a roll call vote here. Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. Bishop.
Yes.
And Ms. Brown, I vote yes. And so we will recommend to the Choose Love pilot for the meeting later this week. All right. Thank you so much for all of you for logging in, working so hard, and putting this great program to work in our district. I really appreciate all these great perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
So let's see. Next, we are going to talk about elementary school science. All right. Are you on? Let's see here. So we're going to be talking about a couple different pilots that have been going on. Would you like to go ahead and give us the overview on that, Dr. McKinney?
Yep. So over the course of this year, we've piloted 3 different elementary science resources: Mystery Science, Amplify, and PhD Science. I'll introduce our elementary science peer coach who work with these teachers to evaluate these resources. And we've come to a recommendation for next steps. So with that, I'll introduce Monica Tino, who's our elementary peer science coach. Just unmute yourself there, Monica.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Should I share my screen for the PowerPoint or?
You can do that, or we can have Ms. Kinsella do the driving if you want.
Okay. All right, I got it. All right. All right, so we've been working this year on piloting 3 different resources, like Dr. McKinney said: Mystery Science, Amplify, and PhD Science. We took it through a toolkit. It's called Next Gen Time. Next Gen Time is used to evaluate resources for school districts based on the next generation science standards. These are the 4 institutions that kind of back it up, which are very reputable institutions in science. And so we started off by first, we took a day of professional development with some of the pilot teachers, and we went through the resources. So we looked through all three of the programs, and through the protocol, we looked at foundations, student thinking, student progress, and support for teachers. So foundations refers to, does it have all of the things that the next generation science standards call for? Number two, does it make students really think about science and the science concepts that they're learning about? How does it help students progress throughout all of the curriculum, the standards? And does it have good support for teachers? So we took it through the rubric, and these are the scores that we ended up with doing this. So for foundations, this is looking at the presence of science phenomena, 3 dimensions of the science learning, and a logical sequence. So this is out of 5. So you can see here the scores for Mystery Science, Amplify, and PhD. For student thinking, this is looking at phenomena, 3-dimensional conceptual framework, the student's prior knowledge. Are they coming in with a prior knowledge that they need to be able to use these resources? Their metacognitive abilities, equitable learning opportunities for all. And so after evaluating the materials, we found that Mystery Science scored a 3 out of 5, Amplify a 4.6, and PhD Science a 3.4. We also evaluated it for student progress. So does it have a variety of measures, or is it just one way that they assess students? Are there 3-dimensional performances that the students are able to partake in? Is it equitable for everyone? Can all of our students access this? And these were the scores. A 2.5 for Mystery Science, 4.5 for Amplify, and 2.5 for PhD Science. And finally, in this first, what we call the paper screen, we looked at support for teachers. What kind of support do these resources actually offer for teachers as they're teaching using science phenomena, 3-dimensional learning, the coherence of it? Does it support student and diverse learning needs, support to monitor student progress throughout the lessons and units of study? And Mystery Science scored a 1.8, Amplify a 5, and PhD Science scored a 2.6. So then tallying everything together, the final paper screen pilot score, this is what we got for each one of the resources. Mystery Science was a 55.75%, Amplify was 96.55%, and PhD Science was a 60.41%. So then we went out and piloted the resources. We had teachers piloting Mystery Science in all the grades K through 5. For Amplify, we had teachers piloting at the kindergarten, 4th, and 5th grade level. And for PhD Science, we had pilot teachers in the district in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. So while the teachers were piloting these materials, I was supporting them. I was teaching some of them. And we were completing as teachers the pilot tool number 1, which was a survey about actually using and implementing the materials. And the students at the end were, or twice in some cases throughout, were completing also a pilot tool that allowed them to have some voice in their student learning as well. So then we came back together after we all finished piloting all of the resources, and we compiled our data and analyzed our data according to the Next Gen Time protocol. And what we found for each one of them, we were able to develop, after going through all the compiling everything and answering all the questions, we were able to come up with a score in student learning and teacher support for each resource. So for Mystery Science, we have a student learning score of 60%, telling us that we thought student learning wasn't at 100%, that not all students were grasping the material or the science concepts. Teacher support was at 44%. For Amplify, we have 2 scores here for student learning, and I just want to explain those real quick. 67% was as is, the way that we got the information back from the students. One of the teaching experiences, the teacher felt that the students weren't completing the form, maybe misinterpreting what the form was saying, and maybe that could have changed a little bit. So she calculated what she thought, and she put that into the rubric. And so what she thought the students had learned based on her personal experiences and her conversations with them. So I put that score in parentheses here, 93%, just for us to look at. And teacher support, 100%. For PhD science, we have for student learning, 20%. And teacher support, 36%. So then we can come up with final pilot scores, taking into account the first day with the paper screen, and then the second day after everyone had piloted. And these are the scores. And again, that Amplify has the 2 for that discrepancy. So mystery science was a 54%, Amplify was 90%, and PhD science came in at 44%. So the scores were great. It was a great learning experience for all of the teachers, I think, for all of us going through it, really understanding a resource. It made us really dissect it and really understand it. But I thought it was also important for us to have conversations about it, because sometimes, these protocols don't include every little thing about the resource. So as part of this day, we looked a little bit at the resource and what we thought about it. And so mystery science overall, by all of the teachers that piloted it, recommended it for us. And these are the things, I'll give you a couple of minutes if you want to kind of peruse through these, and they're in your notes as well. These are the things that the mystery science piloters thought was great about mystery science and what they really liked about it. For Amplify, they also recommended Amplify Science for the district. They set up theirs a little bit differently. They were looking at teacher benefits and student benefits. They also looked at how Amplify was aligned with the next generation science standards and 3D learning. And also it has a very strong literacy component to it. They have partner reading protocols, explaining using evidence, vocabulary routines. And I talked about this last time I came to this committee. I talked about partnering with the elementary science coaches in Salem, in the Salem School District. They also piloted Amplify this year. This was the only thing that they piloted. They had 8 teachers at the 5th grade level. All 8 teachers absolutely loved Amplify, and the reading specialist was really impressed with the reading pedagogy that was embedded in each unit. PhD science got a thumbs down from all the pilot teachers. Most of the complaints were based around these 2 categories here. Materials. The materials were very difficult to use. They didn't have, although we had the kits from the company, they didn't have everything that they needed. And the directions were really difficult to follow. The investigations also were another thing that was not a positive experience. The visuals weren't good. They thought the hooks were not relevant and accessible, for example. So some of the things about PhD science and why it wasn't recommended by the teachers. So the science steering committee met last week. At least I think it was last week, and they recommended Amplify Science based on the piloting data that I just went through with you. It's recommended by teachers, it's recommended by the science steering committee, It is three-dimensional and aligned to our standards. Student learning, again, was 67%, if not 93. Teacher support was 100%, and the final pilot score it got was a 90%. So the plan is to use this new resource with just the 5th grade next year and trickle down the year after that to the younger grades. Looking at just implementing it next year for the 5th grade will be a lot of professional development for the teachers, getting them used to a new program, to understand all the parts and the ins and outs of it, and also the new lessons and units. Some of it does change. The scope and sequence did change a little bit in topics, for example, from our last scope and sequence from our last curricula. So we're looking at a lot of teachers have already gone through an introduction to the next generation science standards, and I'll continue to do that until all of the elementary school teachers have had that opportunity. I've also created an NGSS pedagogy training that I was supposed to have implemented. I was starting the Monday that we started not going to school anymore. So I'm working on putting that online right now for teachers. Also looking at professional development in terms of the assessment and the report card, as the way that we assess students with new resources does change. And meanwhile, while the teachers are waiting for their new resource, we're looking at K through 4th grade to be using Mystery Science next school year. So to look at Amplify Science, kind of a quick look at it. This was a unit that I taught in kindergarten at Charlotte Ave with Mrs. Holmes. The students took part in this Amplify unit with me. We co-taught it together, and the whole theme of the unit was, how can we design a pinball machine so the pinball can move in all the ways that we want it to, which really grasped the students' interests right away in kindergarten. And this is a picture right here of one of the students. We called it their box model because they were designing like engineers, and their model right here that they drew before they built it. So one of the things that the students did was, one of the first things that they did was they figured out, well, how does a pinball start to move? And so they practiced moving things around the room. And each section of the unit has, you can see this big book right here. And this is our literacy coach reading with them in this unit. She also really, well, I don't want to speak for her, but she also taught this with me, alongside with me, helping me with the literacy portion of it. And so the students figured out, well, you make things move by pushing and pulling things. And they did things like, these are writing together. They're writing a sentence together. We also had sentence strips for them to learn how to talk like scientists. And this right here shows us a picture of the students trying to figure out, well, how does a pinball move as far as we want it to move? And they sorted these cards. One of the things that they did to learn this was sorting these cards. Then they worked on figuring out, how do we make the ball move to a certain place? So they added this little launcher thing to their box model and figured out, well, if you push it to the left, it's going to go left. If you push the ball to the right, it is going to go to the right. And they used targets and they used tennis balls to really figure out how they pushed it to different places. And here are the students' partner reading. And what they're doing is they're looking through the book and finding ways that people made in the book. It's all sports pictures about how people make the ball move in different directions when it's already moving. So if a ball's coming towards you and you kick it into the goal, you made it change direction by kicking it. So then they had to add something that helped them change direction. And that's when they added these little flippers to their models. And some of them added these bumpers here. So the ball changed directions when it hit something. And before they made their models, their box models, they had to draw their models of what they thought was going to happen. And finally, at the end of our unit, the students shared with another kindergarten class, and they had a checklist. You can see this girl's checklist right here. They had pictures for each one too, if they weren't reading yet. And so they went through and they said, well, this is how I got the ball to change directions. This is how I got the ball to start to move. And they taught their friends from a different kindergarten class all about forces in motion. And at the end, they wrote me this book. It was dictated by they dictated to their teacher. And you can see here by their explanation that their learning has carried on, that they really internalized and really deeply understand how forces work. So this is a kindergartner's exact words. I am exerting a force on the ball. We are playing rug ball. I am using a strong force because Mrs. Tino is far away across from me. So they're really deeply understanding this whole idea of force. And they all did their own drawing and explanation. So that was just a quick look at a unit from Amplify. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tino. Okay, let's see. Anybody have any questions off the bat? All right. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. My question is, right now, K through 4, are we currently using Mystery Science?
Mystery Science was a pilot this year, so we had people piloting it. And since we had access to it throughout the school district, K to 5, a lot of teachers tried it. Some just for a few lessons, some for the whole year. It was kind of just a trial basis this year.
So next year we're using it from K to 4, and we're going to do the pilot program on Amplify. Is that what I'm hearing?
We're going to introduce the new resource to the 5th grade, right?
Okay.
So Mrs. Johnson, the current science curriculum in place is the same that was in place in 2014. So we've adopted the next gen science standards. So now we need a resource that matches that. Mystery Science was free for a pilot last year.
Okay.
So the only cost to us for the district was the cost of supplies, which was mostly common household items or school supplies that most teachers had access to.
So for grade 5, for the new program, is that going to align them in middle school? So when they go into middle school, the science is lined together? Is that why we're doing the pilot at the 5th grade and not doing K through 5?
Yep, that's one reason. And it's also the grade level that we're tested in. The New Hampshire State Assessment assesses 5th graders in their science.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So my first question was actually similar to Mrs. Johnson's. It's why wouldn't we start at the bottom, start with the kindergartners and work their way up, as opposed to starting at the 5th graders and work our way down? Is there reasoning for that? Is it primarily because of the test, the 5th grade test?
I would say that's a contributing factor. The other one is our middle school colleagues are asking us for help in embedding important content knowledge in those kids before they go into middle school. Once they go to departments, the expectations kind of ramp up a little bit. I would also say there's some other factors, including Amplify's costly program. And, we have to look at the budgetary piece. And also the primary teachers, they're very busy people. So they don't have, they're a little concerned about the time commitment. The lessons are longer. There's more material to cover. But you can see it is a quality resource. It embeds a lot of literacy in it. So it is something to consider down the road. At Science Steering, we did talk to some primary teachers who like the fact that it is high engagement for students, and it's not overly burdensome in terms of planning and instruction. So while the cost there is a cost savings for not using Amplify. We also have to recognize we have to invest a lot in professional development for teachers. So we're fortunate we have Mrs. Tino, but also they need to go through a certified training in next gen standards as well.
Is there a plan to roll it out through the rest of the elementary grades, or just to keep this as the 5th grade model and keep the mystery science for the lower elementary?
I think it's a year at a time. I think we want to take the 5th year and see how it goes, and have some conversations with Science Steering Committee. I think we met with the grade 2 and 3 teachers at Science Steering. And I think any change over time, if we support teachers, they get the pedagogy, they get to understand the framework, I think it will help over time. So right now, this is year 1, but I'm happy to come back in a year's time and see where we are and what the committee is recommending going forward.
Thank you. And I was curious about when it talked about student learning in one of the slides you presented for the mystery and then the Amplify. Was that talking about student retention at the end of the unit or at the end of the year, or was it talking about how the teachers? Was there a summative assessment? How are we deciding whether they learned or whether they filled out the form correctly?
So when we're talking about student learning, we're looking at how they're able to apply those concepts in other situations. So for example, those kindergartners able to say things like, I pulled out my teeth, my tooth was wiggly and I pulled out my tooth with a force downward. That's them, and they did do that. That's them using and applying that information again afterwards. So the way that the assessments are, within the program, that's what we were looking for. So the first student learning was the paper screen. So that was the teachers looking at the resource and saying, okay, does this, in our opinion, evaluate student learning? Does the resource do that? And so that's how it got those scores. And then in the final one, in the second part of it, it was looking at what the teacher's opinion was about the students and their conversations with the students, but also the students, how they felt their learning was.
And let's see, I guess my last question was this piloted at all the elementary schools or just selected schools for the where we tried these? Or would you do it by where they're integrated at different 4th grade schools, or was it all district wide? Sorry.
Mystery science was certainly district wide. The people that were on the pilot program were not in every single school, no. So it was really based on people who volunteered, people who went to a training last summer, some of those people that were really interested in science. So it wasn't like one person at each elementary school, no.
All right, does anyone have any more questions about the science presentation? All right, I would like to recommend that we send to the full board the elementary science pilot recommendations as presented. And may I get a second?
Second.
All right, Ms. Bishop is a second. All right. See, I will do the roll call for the vote. Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
And Ms. Jet Brown votes yes. All right, it is approved. We will recommend this science curriculum to the Board of Education. Thank you very much, Ms. Tino.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next thing on our agenda is the NEF Science Center information. So this sounds like fun. Let's hear about this.
So a number of years ago, you can see the proposals from 2012. There was a proposal to create a science resource center with the support of the Nashua Education Foundation that pre-Amazon would deliver science kits to the classroom teachers. The teachers would teach those units. and then it would be picked up and returned and replenished back at the Science Center. Thanks in large part to the support of the National Education Foundation, we're bringing this proposal to life, hopefully next year, if we're back in whatever shape form we're back. We found a space at Elm Street. We've cleaned out that space. We're identifying the science supplies that we're going to need, K-8, and we're going to be establishing kind of this science center where we can have storage for the science kits. We can replenish the materials. We can do some of the ordering. We're going to partner with Plan Ops in terms of having free delivery to the schools for teachers. So I just wanted to share that because this ties into the science proposal along with the work that we've done at Amplify at the middle school in terms of budgetary support for these curriculum things, along with the Education Foundation supporting the materials that we need. So for example, Mystery Science has a list of all the things that teachers will need. So we're going to work with them with around $14,000 worth of materials, get those organized for teachers, and then have them in bins so that they can use them over the course of the year. And then when the year's over or they're done that unit, they get returned and replenished. So it's kind of an exciting proposal, and I want to share it with the board while we're talking science.
Excellent. That sounds exciting. I guess my only question is, since you've added in the part that we are hopefully going to have free delivery to the schools and all that kind of thing, this is better than Amazon. I love it. All right. Does anyone have any questions or comments about this exciting new venture? Excellent. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. McKinney. All right. Let's hear about elementary remote learning. Some updates on that.
I know we've been hearing a lot about it. I just wanted to share that there are 2 Google Forms that are out available for parents and educators that I've put out since we've been in remote. And I can't tell. This first one is for educators in your packet, teachers, administrators, and paraprofessionals. Just a couple of simple questions to get some feedback. And if I just quickly check the results here, we have $172 responses for this one here. And then there's a similar form there specifically from parents around getting feedback from them. And we have 189 responses there at the elementary level. So while it may not encompass all the aspects of remote learning, I've been reviewing the results, and we'll do a more comprehensive visit, but I've been putting these out here with my correspondence weekly with teachers when I do the Curriculum Chronicle, and when I send home letters of notification to parents, I ask them for their feedback as well. So I just wanted to share that with the board.
Thank you very much. Is there a place where parents or teachers could go and find that survey, or is that like an emailed out document?
It's in the letters that I've put, but I can make it easier in terms of designating a spot or making more prominent in that COVID section for parents and teachers. So I can work with Ms. Hines to do that.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate you getting that parent feedback. And do you see something coming? Do you see any consistencies thus far of positives or negatives, like a standout struggle, or is it something that's been going particularly well? Or you feel like you're still compiling that data?
Initially, the themes were, before we made some adjustments, themes of being overwhelmed, the amount of work and teacher time, screen time. After we made some modifications, it seemed to be in a place where people are a little more comfortable. There are certainly challenges in terms of technology, getting connected. I'm just scrolling through some of them now. Timing, working families, some challenges with reluctant students. Remote's not for everybody, so how do we keep those kids engaged? I certainly think now there's a level of some fatigue and frustration. We didn't ask for this, we didn't sign up for this, but it is what it is. We're trying to get through it. The educator piece, I think at some point it would be beneficial to bring groups together and kind of do some focus groups and have a common discussion. A lot of great comments in terms of, I asked them to recognize somebody who made a positive experience. A lot of great comments about our administrators, our peer coaches, teachers in the building, support personnel, our TIAs in terms of helping with Google Classroom. But it was a huge learning curve. So if you were, a veteran administrator, educator, or para, and you weren't used to Google Classroom or being online, there was a steep learning curve in the beginning.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. I think there's going to be so much that we can learn from this survey and coming together as a group. Do you have any plans for like a timeline of when we maybe could get some of those work groups going? Or is that still in the works?
Still in the works. I know Dr. Mosley is looking to do some evaluation of remote learning. And I think we're all kind of waiting to see what the summer may look like, or how do we transition to the fall. So that's kind of where we are right now. Like, how do we even do new teacher orientation? So I think once we get guidance to that, we can bring groups together. I think there is also a level of Zoom fatigue, so we're trying to limit the amount of time we all do that as well and try to take care of ourselves.
Excellent, thank you. Actually, so this is just out of curiosity, if since this is the curriculum committee, do you find that there's any one curriculum or two curriculums that have been more difficult than others to move to online remote learning? Or do you think there's some that the transition was very easy?
I don't know if I could give a definitive answer. It certainly varies from building to building and the capacity of the teacher. I've seen some pretty creative things from teachers doing guided reading groups and small groups in Zoom, YouTube videos in terms of morning message and SEL. I think math is probably one of the areas I would lean to in terms of it's hard to remediate kind of like this across from a screen, and the tools that are available. And if you're not familiar with our style of teaching, it can also be challenging. Although Eureka has put some free model lessons out there, our pacing's a little bit off, so we don't have access to all of that. But science, kids love science. Mrs. Tino's been doing magic science tricks online, and the kids have been participating in that. But I certainly think, some of the comments in here as well, or I also think it was in your SEL stuff, building relationships kind of disconnected like this is not always easy. And I do have concerns in terms of coming back together in terms of the level of trauma and finding creative ways to mediate that for young people. A principal mentioned that the other day, that even our K1, 2 kids they know something's going on and it's going on too long and it's a little weird. And they're having a hard time maintaining their focus in some of the instruction that teachers are providing. So I think we're all optimistic, but a little nervous about coming back together again at some point.
Well, thank you very much. Does anyone else have any questions about curriculum or remote learning for Dr. McKinney? All right. Well, thank you very much. I have enjoyed all the presentations tonight. I think thank you to all of the teachers and administrators and curriculum coordinators that have been putting all this stuff together. And thank you, Dr. McKinney, for rounding it all up. All right, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, from Ms. Johnson. And
Seconded.
And seconded. All right, Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. Bishop.
Yes.
And Ms. Brown says yes. All right, we are adjourned at 5:44 p.m. Thank you very much.
Have a good night, everybody. I'll
Thank
be
you,
at the
everyone.
next meeting at 6:30.
Stay safe.
Thank you.